This is Justin.
And this is Haley, and you're listening to The Price of Avocado Toast.
We're a married millennial couple wanting to normalize conversations about money. We want to hear about your highs and your lows,
The do's and the don'ts on your path towards financial freedom. Hi Toasties, welcome to Price of Avocado Toast.
Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been following us from the start of this thing, we're so glad to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah. Today, we're talking with Sami Womack, and I'm super excited because last week we had an episode with V where we talked all about Dave Ramsey like we always do, and she dropped Sami's name twice for the
Twice,
episode.
I think, yeah.
So I think you guys need to be introduced to Sami.
Yeah, Sammy's super dope. Her and V are really tight friends, and so that kind of hooked us up with chatting with Sami, and I was super glad to talk with her as a young mom and hearing her family story, a debt story that kind of replicated ours. I mean, not as wild of getting a large inheritance, but just being in debt as a young family and stuff. It was really great to talk to her, so I'm excited for the Toasties to hear it.
Yeah, and by the way, when you just said that, it sounded like you are a young mom.
I am a young mom.
You are a young mom.
Hot
All right,
mom
guys,
summer.
I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's dive right into it.
All right, Toasties, today we are sitting down with Sami Womack from A Sunny Side Up Life. Sami, thank you so much for taking some time to sit down with us. As you know, we've started a pretty cool collaboration with V, who speaks incredibly highly of you. So we're glad that you were able to join us today. Thanks again for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Yeah, I'm her, everyone knows we're best friends at this point. Like, it's not a secret. So, yeah, proud.
I love
proud.
that. So, Sami,
Yeah.
you are like all the things. You are a mom, you are a homeschooling mom, you're a blogger, a podcaster, a money coach. I'm really excited to hear everything that you are and that you do. So can we just start off by having you tell the Toasties, which are our listeners, telling them a little bit about who you are and what you do without giving all of the juicy details just yet.
Yeah. Okay. So you told most of it. So I also have been married to my high school sweetheart for 13 years. We've been together for 18 years, like the majority of our lives. We have 3 daughters. Our oldest is just about to turn 11. We also have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. So all girls. We homeschool. We are in East Texas. Yeah, we just, we love the outdoors. We do all this stuff together. We live life together. My husband also works offshore. So he's gone for 3 weeks. He's home for 3 weeks. So we have a lot of adventures on his home time. We have a lot of girl time on his work time. And that's kind of us. Yeah.
So in the times that he's gone, obviously you are handling everything. So you are teacher on top of mom, on top of like your own brand and stuff. That's a lot.
Solo parenting. Yeah. I mean, luckily the past couple years, now that our girls are getting bigger, it is getting easier. Like, I know you guys still have little ones, but it is getting easier. People are a lot more willing to babysit now that they're kind of like, they can bathe themselves and dress themselves and feed themselves. And so luckily they have started a tradition the past couple, like maybe 2 years. They go and spend every Friday with my mom, which is like, that is my like sanctuary, in the middle of his 21-day hitches that I look forward to the break. But also like, a lot of this like countercultural life that we live in a lot of ways, I like my kids. Like, I like hanging out with them. They're the coolest little people. But yeah, I mean, honestly, yes, it does get to be a lot, but honestly, yes, I kind of love the chaos at the same time.
That's awesome. I guess that makes it easier, definitely, if you're like, actually, I really enjoy spending time around my kids. Like, I'm not totally
they're the
turned
coolest.
off by it.
Some people literally can't stand to be around their kids. Justin talks about this all the time. He's like, he gets home from work and he's like, I'm so happy. I love to be around our kids. Not only do you love them, but you like them.
Yeah. They're rad. They're super fun.
Yeah.
And I imagine, once they get like older, like 11 and stuff, like you can have some pretty cool conversations. Like they're learning and like engaging with the world in really cool ways.
They are. It is like, I tell people that my husband's at work. It is basically like a sorority house. Like someone is like crying. Someone is naked. Someone is like watching TV. Like It is like a crazy sorority house. And I just, they honestly, like, they're my little hippie feminist babies. And I just, like, I'm so proud of them. And they're just the coolest little people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is so cool. So I have to ask about homeschooling. Were you homeschooled growing up, or is this something that you totally just decided to do?
I was. It was about half and half. I went back and forth a lot. It kind of depended on where we lived. It depended on what was going on in our lives. And I have two sisters, and they kind of did as well. And it was really very individualized. There was sometimes where I was the only one in public school. There were other times where all three of us were, or just two of us were. It was very individualized of who needed what. And, my parents were really good at like recognizing those times. My middle sister and I both graduated high school, homeschooled, and my youngest sister graduated from public school. And it was just kind of like what was right for us in the moment. My husband was also homeschooled for like 2 years. He was in private school a lot. He was in public school a lot. So we both kind of had like a mixed match of everything. And then it honestly wasn't our plan. My plan was, I was the first one in my family to get a college degree. So I was going to be like the business woman, like I was going to make all this money. I was going to have this like corporate career was my goal. I was right out of the gate, like prepared to send my kids to daycare. And then I met my daughter, then I met my oldest daughter, and she turned our whole world upside down. And I was just like looking at her and I'm like, I'm not going to send her to daycare yet. I'm going to, and I just kept pushing it back. And I was just like, the first day that should have been her first day of kindergarten, I just held her and I was like, this is right. Like, I just knew it was right. And it kind of parallels so much with like the countercultural lives that we live, of like living a debt-free journey. It's so much the same. It's like, we just had the courage to kind of pause and be like, what's best for our family, not what we're supposed to do, what feels right, what feels in alignment. And all that journey paralleled so much for us. And we're like, why are we gonna like listen to this side we feel like is right and ignore this other side? So it just all kind of came together. Yeah.
That's awesome. You gave us a nice little segue there. Can you share a little bit about your debt-free journey? Because y'all have quite the story.
Yeah. So we started with about $490,000 of debt. This has been about 7 years in the making. Really, our rock bottom was about 8 years. It was actually like right when our middle daughter was due to be born. Like I said, my husband works offshore. So he was in New York at the time working. We're in Texas. And I'm like 2 days away from giving birth. I'm like, I've got an induced date. It's like, okay, fly home. We're going to induce, like, don't miss the baby. And we didn't have the money for him to fly home. And so we ended up having to like max out our last credit card that still had anything available. We had like $200 available balance. This last minute flight was like $800 or something like that. But it let us do it. It let us go over. We had no money in savings, absolutely nothing. All of our other cards were maxed out. But the big kicker was she was our most planned baby of the 3 babies. We tried for several months to get pregnant with her, like the whole thing. And here we are 2 days away from giving birth, and we don't have money for him to come home. And it was just like one of those rock bottom moments where life hit us and was like, you're somebody's parents, and this is the way you're behaving. Because June was almost 3 at the time. Like, we have a toddler, we have a newborn, and you have no savings, not even any credit cards to fall back on anymore. Like, what are you doing? And it was just really this wake up moment. But the real crazy thing was we just sat in that survival mode, which a lot of people do. And my clients do this a lot. So I know now that it's not uncommon, but it felt like we were just insane at the time. That we stayed basically in this rock bottom kind of survival mode for almost a year before I guess I kind of like bounced back from having a baby. And it just finally, we were like, hey, it's time. And we finally like added up our debt. We finally got like on kind of sort of a budget. We muddled our way through it. We didn't know how to do it. We didn't know anybody who had done this. Like, Normal people don't cash flow vehicles. Normal people don't just have thousands of dollars laying around in the bank. Like normal people struggle, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do when you have little kids. Society tells us that's what's normal. And so, so we added up our debt. We started like chugging away at it. It was medical debt. It was credit cards. It was a lot of taxes. We had property taxes. We had income tax. We had sales tax from my business that I had already closed, but I still owed sales tax. We had 3 properties at the time. People tell you, have a rental house, right? Like that's the smart thing to do. It's not the smart thing to do when you have no savings account. And that's essentially what we had done. We upgraded in house and we kept our old house. We had no savings account. So when the air conditioner went out, because of course it will, we put it on a credit card. When the tenants were late on the rent, we just didn't pay the rent because we didn't have anything. We got called into the vice president of the bank's office and he was like, hey, your mortgage is almost 3 months late. He was like, foreclosure papers have come to my attention. And I was like, oh no. And he got us on a payment plan and it was this whole thing. I mean, we were like 3 years behind on property taxes. It was just everywhere. It was just like we were spending out of control, plus our house that we were actually living in was like 3,200 square feet. It was massive. It was way too much. And then maybe 10 months into this journey, we had our 3rd daughter. We found out we were pregnant with her like a month after we added up our debt.
Wow.
And I was just like crying. I was like, why now?
Oh man.
We just felt like we were just spinning out of control, like in every different direction. We were trying to gain traction and, life does what it does. It throws things
A spiral for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was crazy. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, how did we make it out of that? I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Holy smokes. Okay. So what was the total number that y'all paid off and how fast, how long did it take you guys?
Yeah, so it was 490. That included 3 pieces of property. The other one was just like raw land that we had. So we did kind of hustle through everything except the properties, and we ended up selling all 3.
Oh wow!
And we were just like, you know what, clean slate. We moved into a rent house, and that was, oh man, it was maybe like 3 years of kind of just like. We paid everything else off. We sold all the properties. We really didn't make profit on any of the properties. We don't care. Get out of here. One of those kind of things. And we have been renting this 600 square foot 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house for like 4.5 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were just like, we're going to just clean slate, start over. And then
this sounds very, very, very similar to our story. So I can totally see why V was like, you have to hear Sammy's story because this is, I'm like, oh, flashback.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, just that idea of the clean slate, like selling our home and moving up here, very much so for us was like a clean slate of like, okay, we've been blessed with an opportunity to try this again because not many people get that opportunity.
I know we've acquired a lot of new listeners lately, so just a little backstory for anyone who's newly listening. We had about $225,000 worth of debt, and we paid off $132,000 of it. And then we decided to liquidate our assets and sell our home to do the rest of it. And same concept for us. It was like, let's just do this clean slate and be done with it. And move forward. And now we're renting from my mom. So it's a very, very, very similar story.
Yeah. Except not 600 square feet.
No, definitely not 600 square feet.
You guys are like on top of each other. That is, whew.
Well, like I said about our homeschool journey and our debt-free journey, also our minimalism journey, kind of, it all really happened at the same time. And it was really like a challenge. The reason why we moved into this house is because my sister was living next door. She was renting the house next door. Up until like 2 years ago, they bailed on us. I will never forgive her. No. No, they finally bought a house and all that. But when we walked over here to look at this house we saw it was up for rent, she's like, let's just go. Let's just look. Wouldn't it be so fun? Like we could be neighbors. And we came in here and we were like, there's no way we could fit in this house. Plus, we have a 60-pound lab. Like we are literally home 95% of the time. We're homeschooling. I work from home. We're always home. And I just laughed. And she was like, hey, you could do it. Come on, and it was one of those like God moments. It just felt right. And I was like, challenge accepted. Okay. And it's so stinking cheap. Like it is so cheap. And we're on kind of the crappier side of town. Like we're on the safe, like it's safe, but it's not a desirable area of town. Let's just put it that way. So that's why it's so cheap. And here we are. And so many people thought like, oh, you guys are going to hate it there, or you're throwing money away because you're renting. We heard all the things. And we have had the best, these past 4 years have been the best years of our entire lives. We have been able to front load so much of our retirement. My husband, his goal was to retire at 50. We're on track for 49. He's like, the sooner the better. Let's go.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm like, okay, it was totally worth it.
Yeah.
Our girls are getting, they are getting bigger. They're like ready to have their own rooms, but it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's just like a little challenge.
I think too, going back to when you guys were kind of in the thick of those feelings of like, what the heck is going on, right? Like those feelings of like almost not even be able to breathe because it's so much stress. You feel like such a letdown. We very much so had those same feelings of like, we're bringing a child into the world and we have two careers and we're not doing what we're supposed to do. And we were constantly saying like, our kid's going to have it a little bit better than we did. And we're like, wait, why are we in the same track? Right. So like to be where you're at now, I'm sure there's like this sense of like, as long as we don't have those feelings again, like we can be anywhere, or we can have, as little as we need, as long as we're all together and taken care of and on the right track. Like the priority just shifts so drastically and so wildly that, yeah, I mean, obviously we don't have a 600 square foot place, but, I feel very much so similarly that, if that's what we were blessed with, or that's where we were, you find a way to make it work because you're like, at least we're together and happy and healthy and doing better than we were in those times.
Yeah. Yeah. And we kind of always think like we tried to refocus to true wealth building. Like it's not how much you have in your spending account. Like it's really how much you have in your retirement, like how much you have in your investments. Like our net worth is growing and growing and growing. That's really what matters. Like financially, that's kind of what matters. And like, as long as that number keeps growing and as long as our day to day, we're happy, we're doing it right. It feels right. And I think that that's what a lot of people, just the normal life is so busy and so fast and so expensive that we never really stop and go like, does this actually feel good? Does this actually feel right? And sometimes people don't really want to slow down because I think sometimes they don't want to hear that answer.
Agreed.
They don't want to hear like, this house isn't actually right. No, this job isn't actually right. Just all that. Yeah.
Wow.
I want to kind of turn the corner a bit. So on our journey, we worked with the financial coach, and I was like, Justin and I, we are teachers. We are elementary school teachers. I am currently a full-time financial coach, so I am no longer in the classroom. But we're working with our financial coach, and I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. Although we still have a crap ton of debt, I want to be in a position where I can teach people how to get out of debt. So how did that happen for you? Like, how did a sunny side up life get born? How was it born? How did you decide, like, okay, we had a lot of debt, we paid it off, now I want to help coach people?
Yeah, it was kind of a couple of different things that happened. For one, I did actually go to school to be a teacher, and I majored in history. I was going to be a history teacher. That was my whole thing. And then like partway through, I was like, actually I kind of want to be like an entrepreneur. And so I switched my minor. So I did finish with history, but I switched my minor. Instead of education, it was entrepreneurship. And so I never actually like got my teaching certificate or all that. But I kind of knew that like I've always kind of had this big sister, like I just want to help everybody kind of thing. Um, and then I honestly like my actual blog and my Instagram and like all of that kind of happened because I had decluttered my house and really simplified so much of my life. I was super bored. I was super bored. I'm at home. You know, my husband's gone for 3 weeks. I'm at home with just my kids and like they're so little and I'm just like I have no adults to talk to. Okay. You know, and I call it like an entrepreneur curse. Like my brain will not stop. I have to stop myself now from having like 20 different businesses. I totally would if my husband wouldn't like shut it down. Like he helps keep me like neutralized. But I was like, I have to share. I'm kind of bored. I feel like people should know this. And then people like started actually listening to me. And I was like, you guys want to know? Like, you guys want to listen to me? Okay, I'll tell you. And, you know, also like, I just love budgeting. Like, I really just do. I really like nerd out. And mine is so boring now. It's just like nothing exciting to do anymore. So now I just do like 20 other people's budgets instead.
That's
pretty
awesome.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so cool that you mentioned you have this like entrepreneurial spirit. Haley, I think of Colin.
Yes.
Very much.
Yes.
I have a close friend who's very much the same, right? He's constantly has these ideas and they're brilliant, but you do have to be like, okay, whew, you got a lot of ideas. Like, rein not so much as rein the ideas in as much as it's like, let's see you pick one and ride with it. And it's so funny because I have seen him pick with some and ride with it, and he's wildly successful, and he's just a brilliant human being. So it's always cool to listen to people talk like that because I'm very much not the same. Yeah, like I don't really think like that all the time. I'm so much more
well, okay,
like a safety blanket, I guess. I don't know. Like
we are Enneagram 3s, and when we think of something, it's like you cannot stop me from doing it. That one thing. It's like full-blown tunnel vision to do that one thing. When I think of like actual, sure, you could call me an entrepreneur, but I'm not an entrepreneurial spirit at all. Like you just have ideas going. I don't have ideas. I find myself not creative. You're so creative.
No, I am also an Enneagram 3. So I'm an Enneagram 3 and like an entrepreneur minded person. It is like it is really a curse. Like I seriously have to shut myself down. And I've had other businesses and I've done other things. And I have both sides of my family are entrepreneurs. And it is seriously like something I have to stop and go, Sammy, you literally cannot do one more thing. And I love to draw. I constantly, like, that's my go-to hobby. And I constantly get people in my DMs, probably at least once a week, saying, oh my gosh, you could totally sell these like on Etsy, or you could do commissions for people. And I'm like, I can't.
Yeah, I don't have the time.
Thank you so much. Like, I know that you mean well, but like, it gets like that, that side hustle toxicity kind of mindset. My brain goes straight there. You could make more money. You could work hard. I'm like, no, you gotta bring it in. You should sleep sometimes.
Seriously.
Yeah. I've been to therapy for this.
Identifying and acknowledging is the first step, right?
Yeah.
So was the blog what came first for you or okay. Have you seen traffic continue there? Because I know that, media is kind of changing to be so much more video platform based versus like blogging.
Yeah.
How has that worked for you?
You YouTube, right? Don't you YouTube also?
Yeah, I've kind of like calmed down on YouTube again. Like I want to do it all, but I have to sleep. But I really did start with blogging and Instagram, which I started, gosh, it's been almost like 6 years. My page is about 6 years old. So blogging was a lot bigger way back then, and podcasting and videos are really like, I'm not a writer. Like I'm just not. I am a talker. I sit here and talk to you for 5 hours if you let me. And so it's just so natural to me to do podcasts and do videos. And so I'm glad that the media has kind of shifted that way. I love, doing my coaching calls. We get on Zoom, we talk just like we're talking now. And I could just sit and talk to people about money all day long and never get tired of it. But you asked me to write a blog or write an Instagram caption, and V will tell you I sit here and I'm just like, which is why I hired her in the first place, and which is why I need her in my life. We're like yin and yang. Like I need her help so much.
Yeah, she's a pro.
I can't write to save my life. Yeah.
It's interesting. I teach 6th grade language arts, and so I really focus a lot on writing, obviously in my, classes, but I've slowly started to realize that, we don't have a world that functions so much more around writing as much as it used to in the past. And so if somebody enjoys creative writing or they enjoy informational text writing, like that's great. But what many of my students, I truly believe, need are those interpersonal skills, those communication skills, the ability to like speak so much more than writing. And naturally as humans, we are storytellers. And I think we crave storytelling and the arc of storytelling. And so it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think that slowly people are moving away from like needing to write these like, really deep pieces, and instead being like, actually, I really want the performance aspect of it, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
I've told V that one of my biggest goals and dreams is to write a book, ironically enough. And I've told her that before. I'm like, that it's basically just going to be, I'm just going to podcast this whole book, and then you're going to help me transcribe it, because there's no way I can sit in front of a computer and type it. And she's like, let's go, challenge accepted, So when I write a book, whenever this happens in the future, just know that I podcasted it first.
I've actually heard that that's like the way to do it. A lot of people will get hired on with some sort of publisher, and they will just talk their story, talk.
Yeah.
And someone will take it and put it into some articulate piece of writing, while also like keeping the concept and everything, making it sound like it's them. And yeah, that's how a lot of people write books. It's interesting because you think they just sit and write, but
the audiobook will come first.
Yes. I will listen. I love audiobooks. Someone recently asked me, recently asked me if I read books. I listen to books.
I audiobooks all day. My favorite is audiobook. Then I will draw or color or do a puzzle or something like that to keep my hands busy. But I could listen to a book all day long. So yeah.
That's awesome. Again, it's people like storytelling. People naturally want that stuff. You know what I mean?
I need an adult in my ear. Like, I spend so much time with my kids that I'm like, let's have an adult conversation.
Yeah.
So I love it.
In my first year teaching, I was still bartending on the weekends, and I would tell people like, I really like teaching and I loved the kids that I had, but I needed to have adult conversations at the end of the week. Like I needed
people
to go
other
out
than
and
me.
talk to, other than my wonderful wife. Yeah, like I needed to have like conversations with other people that were, not like, oh, this person did that and this person did, like it was, it makes sense. I totally empathize with being like, I love you girls, but like I need a break.
Yep. Yep, exactly.
So, Sami, if you don't mind, we're going to kind of tap into your coaching side briefly and steal some of your coaching minutes here while we have you. If you had just like the quick hits that you were going to give somebody about like what you find most important when starting either the debt-free journey or like the wealth building journey, the net worth journey, what are like just a few of the things you're like, oh, like you've got to make sure maybe these things are aligned, or you're doing this, or you've had these conversations? What would you say those things are that you tend to lean into?
Yeah. So I'm very goal oriented, and I'm very, probably as you could guess, like alignment based, and like what feels right. And are we getting like a bigger picture of, at the end of our life, are we going to be happy with our choices and things like that? And so we talk about so much more than just the numbers. And I think that's what the mainstream, kind of financial conversation is really missing, is that heart based, is that mental health based, is that all that kind of stuff. And so, I talk to my clients a lot about like, who do you want to be? Like, what is your big picture goals? And how can we get you closer to that? Because I don't want to tell somebody, well, you have to like work 5 side hustles and like never see your kids. And like, that's not what life is about. The whole point of budgeting is to help you live a more fulfilled life, a more intentional life. That doesn't mean that you have to work yourself to death or hate your life in the process. And so that's not our goal. Is there a time and a place for a little hustle season? Sometimes. Is there a time and a place like for a challenge? Yeah. But if you hate your life in the process and you quit, or you have a strained relationship with your partner, like that's probably not the right path for you, So how can we work on that? So we talk a lot about the big vision, a lot about like, where do you want to be in 10 years or 20 years? And how can we work backwards to get there? And for us, one of our biggest things is we don't want my husband to have this job forever. He works with so many guys that are in their 60s and even 70s, and there's no retirement on the horizon. He works with people who literally joke and say like, well, I'm going to die on the boat.
Ugh.
Like they just,
That's so sad. That's sad.
That's terrifying.
It's terrible. And he's like, not only do I not want to die on the boat, one, like I want to come home when there's still like good years, so that's been one of our biggest goals. And honestly, like we just want to hang out together more. So he doesn't want to work forever. So it's always been kind of like, how can we reverse engineer that and work backwards? But then also kind of juggling. We also have to like our life in the day to day, which I think that's the biggest hurdle. It's like, how do you do both? And so that's kind of one of the things that I focus most with my clients is kind of how do we juggle that? How do we think big picture, but also how do we kind of be present in the present? And that's something that there's not a one size fits all answer. So that's why I love coaching so much, is because you really get to know a person, you get to know their dreams, their desires, all the things, and you can kind of help them make that customized plan that you can't give somebody that in just an Instagram post or, a generic email or something. So, yeah, I mean, I just think really focusing big picture and staying connected to why are you doing this in the first place? Yeah.
That is so wildly important. When we started our debt-free journey, I was hustling like crazy. And we were listening to the, financial gurus in the space that really do preach hustle culture.
Yeah.
And I agree there is a time and a season for it, and it's easy to tell yourself like this won't be for long, right? But you have to goal set, or you have to think long term to know that it's not going to be forever. Otherwise, it truly does feel like forever. When you're in the thick of it, you feel like this is how it's going to be until we're done. And so I think it's so important to think long term and say, okay, I can do anything. I would say that too. It's like I can do anything for 12 months. I can hustle my butt off and do what we need for this time, as long as I get those years afterwards where I get to not have a second job, or I get to just be dad that's home on the weekends or whatever it may be. I just resonate with that. It's so important to get that mindset out there.
Well, you had multiple jobs. You were teaching, you were bartending, you were serving, you were coaching football. And yeah, we kept saying, we can do anything for a year. And now we're on the other side, and this is going to be like one of the first summers where no one has to have an extra job.
Yeah.
I mean, last summer we didn't either, but it was still so fresh that it was kind of like scramble.
We had a new baby. So
yeah. So this will be like the first year, like, oh, okay, we get to like actually enjoy this aspect of being a teacher where you get the whole summer off.
Yeah.
And not have to have hustle, multiple jobs all day long.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be really cool.
I love that. Yeah. And a part of one of our biggest whys is when he's home, we want to be able to do things.
Mhm.
And so part of us like living in this house was, you know, we cash flowed our boat, we cash flowed our camper. We upgraded our truck. And so now we have a diesel truck so it can pull our camper and pull our boat and all that stuff. We cash flowed through all of that because that all aligns with some of our biggest goals are we want to be outdoors. We want our girls to grow up in nature. We want them to grow up camping and boating. We bought our property about 2 years ago. So now we have 18 acres and they get to grow up, you know, riding four-wheelers and exploring in the woods. And that all fits with that big vision along the way. But we're like, okay, how can we invest for retirement and still do these things? And how do we juggle that? And how do we make this customized plan that fits for us? And our plan would literally not work for anyone else. And that's how you know you're on the right track.
Yeah.
You know, it has to fit your life and your desires. And so, yeah, so that's what we do with our money, you know, and it's amazing. It's a really good life.
That's awesome.
Love it.
I know that
Yeah.
Haley's had a ton of success too, being a financial coach that's like come through it as well. That isn't just like somebody that's removed from it. Like, and I'm sure you've found the same,
Yeah.
that like going through the difficult times like really does make it so much easier to preach about like you deserve the life that you want. Like I'm a
Yeah.
testament right in front of you or over Zoom that like
Yeah.
you can have the life that you want and deserve.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, I'm just a regular person. Like, I swear to you, I just, you know, and that's relatable to me. Like, that's who I look for advice from people that I see myself in them and their journey. I relate to them. And so, like, I tell people, I'm like, I'm just a mom who's like hoping one of my kids doesn't burst in the door and interrupt right now. Like, I'm just, you know, wearing sweatpants and like I'm sitting in the corner of my bedroom. Like, I promise you, I'm like, maybe a few steps ahead of you. That's it. But like, I got you.
Yeah.
Like I've been there.
Yeah, it's relatable. People want to associate with people who are relatable. I mean, I personally would not want to work with a financial coach, which is actually why we chose our financial coach. I wouldn't want to work with someone who was buttoned up in a tie lecturing at me. And when we first met with our financial coach, Ryan, he showed up with a backwards baseball cap on and was like, hey, what's up, guys? And I'm like, you're my man. You're cool.
Yeah. Because I'm like, I love to talk to my fellow moms. Like almost all my clients are moms. I've had a few that aren't, but most of them are. And, you know, I seriously I've been on calls with moms while they're nursing their babies. I've had, you know, I've done several calls where, you know, she's like got her AirPods in and she's like changing a diaper and she's like, keep going. I can hear you. I'm just over here changing a diaper real quick. Or, you know, or I'm like dressing a Barbie, like over here to the side. I'm like, yeah, so about your budget. And I'm like dressing a Barbie, you know, and that's like, and I'm just like, you know, how empowering is that? Like we can be a mom and be like, one of us is breastfeeding and one of us is like dressing a Barbie, and we're sitting here are both like we're working on making her family a millionaire like in the future. Like that's incredible. That's empowering. Like I don't know. That'll get you all fired up all day long.
Absolutely. That's wonderful.
Do you have like a favorite moment from coaching so far where you're like, I got off that call, that was exactly why I'm doing this?
I have so many. I have some days that are hard. I have some days that I cry. I'm such an empath and like I empathize with everyone and I'm everyone's big sister. And like I've had several times where I'm like 2 a.m. like crying. I can't sleep. I worry about people. But those days are not as often. The majority of the time I get off calls and I'm like, oh my gosh, this gets to be my life. This is amazing. Usually I will grab my phone and text V. I'm like, so my client, like she did this. And I, you know, I share with V and Kaylee because I'm like, this is a team win. Like I couldn't be here without you guys, you know, and like, we did this, we're changing people's lives. And I get so fired up. I've had several. I've had one client who they came out from bankruptcy. They're actually still paying off the last of their bankruptcy. And I've worked with her for over a year. And every single time we get on the call, she always like halfway through, like takes a deep breath and she's like, okay, I just always feel better after we talk. And I'm like, I know, and a couple months ago, we were working on her investments because she's finally to the place where she can like start investing more and she feels more confident. Like, it's not quite so scary. She's still, even though they filed bankruptcy, is still going to be able to retire with about $1 million
Ugh.
by the time she's like 60, 65, something like that.
That's amazing.
And she's like, are you kidding me? And I like, hang on. And I'm like on the screen share on the investment calculator. I'm like, refresh, type it all in. I'm like, yep, the math is still the same, friend,
Yeah.
and that those are like the moments where it's just like, that's the whole point. I've
Yeah.
had, I told Daniel, I'm like, I can't wait for it to be like 20 years from now. And like those people are really going to be millionaires.
Yeah.
And I played some role in that. And that's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's not just their lives, it's their partner, it's their kids, it's their grandkids. Like, you're literally getting to play a role in changing the world.
Yeah.
Changing lives.
Yes.
Actively
yes.
changing lives.
Generationally too.
You're
Like,
literally cheesing so hard right
Yeah.
now, Justin.
because I think I like that stuff makes me so excited when I
Yeah.
think about that. Like, I'm very much so
Yeah.
teaching is a passion thing, and I'm like, yeah, like I get to hopefully change students' lives for the positive.
Yeah.
But like the idea of generational wealth to me for people who did not believe that it was accessible to them
Mm-hmm.
is remarkable, right? Like generational
file
wealth for others.
bankruptcy,
Yeah,
like-
exactly. Like I can't imagine how freeing that would feel for somebody who thinks like I've gone through these slums of, financial ruin, and
Mhm.
I now see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's like the best light there could be.
Yeah.
Like it's so cool to me. There's nothing cooler than that. I just think it's awesome.
I love that about coaching, and I find that like when you're ready to make a change, man, nothing can stop you. And then you get a good coach or friend in your corner and shut it down. Like, you're unstoppable. Like,
Yeah.
you could do whatever you want, and it's a really
Oh,
cool
yeah.
really cool thing to witness. And I love having other financial coaches and money coaches or budget coaches, whatever people want to call themselves, on our podcast, because I truly believe that this is like a career that people don't even know exists. I think it's relatively
Yeah.
new, and we need more financial coaches because people need help.
Yeah.
People-
One of my favorites is single moms. It's just a soft spot of mine.
Mhm.
Like, think about these women. I think about how I solo parent half the time, and I'm like, I still have like a partner. I still like I'm so privileged
Mhm.
to have like a co-parent the way I do. Even when he's physically not here, like I still have that support. And so that is one of my soft spots, is like, I want to help these women who are out here like doing it by themselves. And so many have just kind of like manifested these amazing clients that are just like amazing, independent single moms. And, just to see them be like, you know what, I can do this. One of my very first clients, she was so like kind of reserved in the beginning. And she was like, okay, I'm just going to like put it out there. And she was like, my ex-husband told me that I wouldn't survive without him.
Mm.
So I need you to help me survive without him. Like, we kind of had that conversation, and I was like, oh, let's go. I was just like that. She was one of my first clients. So I was like, okay, I was meant to do this.
Yeah.
Like, this is amazing. And so I've had so many other situations like that. Like, it gives me goosebumps just to think back to that conversation. And now, like, that was almost 2 years ago. She is completely crushing it. Like, she just bought a house. Like, she's doing all this incredible stuff. And I just think back to like that first, conversation, and it's incredible. Yeah.
That's amazing. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, you guys.
Oh,
That's
you.
so rad.
Thank you.
So, Sammy,
Yeah.
our last question is our all-time famous question. We say it's a famous question. Do people really think it's famous?
I don't know. It's been in like over 50 episodes
It's
now.
been the famous question for every interview.
Yeah.
So we like to end our interviews asking the person that we're interviewing, if you could put a stop sign on someone's financial journey and stop them from doing something, what would you stop them from doing?
Oh man. Probably financing a brand new car, maybe just because we personally did that. And it was one of the worst decisions we ever made.
Yep, we did too.
Yeah, we bought a truck that had maybe 12 or 13 miles on it. Not only that,
oh my God. It's like
Yeah.
just literally a test drive. It's not even like from one
Yeah.
dealer to another. It's literally test drive. Oh my gosh.
Brand spanking new. And not only that, we traded in a negative balance on our other truck of like a teen number of negative balance. I mean, so we were upside down before we even signed any papers.
Oh my
It
God.
was so bad. Yeah. And our note was like it was so close to $900 that I rounded it to $900 when I paid it.
Monthly?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh my God.
And so it was so bad that we could not afford a second vehicle. So we just shared it, like, because it cost as much as 2 vehicles. It cost almost as much as 3. It was so bad, but that's who we were then. And, we were so entitled, and it was my husband's dream truck. He worked so hard. He deserved it, so I get a little passionate about it. I'm like, yeah, but also you deserve to like have, not a negative balance.
Yeah.
You deserve to not be upside down and like stick to your stomach every time you look at your vehicle.
Yeah.
That's more than a mortgage in Michigan.
Like you can't even you can't even enjoy the truck.
Yeah.
Because
it was
you owe
more
so
than
much
our
damn
mortgage.
money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was more than our mortgage, and we literally could barely afford to put gas in it. Like I remember getting declined at the pump to put gas in it. I mean, what were we thinking? Like, it was so dumb. But we deserved it. And that's how people were going to know that we were somebody,
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So there we go. And it wasn't even like a Range Rover. It was just a Silverado. It wasn't even like really, I don't know. It was his dream truck, but I'm like, come on, I don't know.
And
but
you guys were living in Texas at the time, right? So it's not even really like it would have stood out.
No, it was it was really basic. It was really, yeah.
Oh my
it
goodness.
wasn't,
A Silverado here.
and
that's a big truck.
yeah.
Well, I don't know.
All my
have
Texas clients make fun of the California people for their avocados and the Priuses. And I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, we eat avocados, but we do not drive a Prius.
Now we ended up keeping that truck until just a couple years ago, actually. Like, we literally drove it until it had like nearly 300,000 miles on it. We finally got our money's worth, kind of. But we recently, a couple years ago, we upgraded to a bigger Silverado. So now we have like a diesel, so it'll pull our camper and everything.
I love that, though.
But we bought this one in cash.
Nice.
And it was much, much better.
Oh, what a great feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Making changes.
Yeah.
So, Sammy, where
yeah.
can the Toasties find you and connect with you and find your podcast and look into coaching and everything?
Yeah, so I'm at A Sunny Side Up Life everywhere. Instagram is my favorite. It's my addiction. I also have my podcast, like you said, and my website where you can find all my freebies and coaching and, my worksheets and course and all that good stuff is there as well. So, yeah, that's me.
Perfect.
Awesome.
I'm sure Haley will link everything in the show notes.
100%. I will.
I don't do any of that stuff. I kind of just get to be like the on-air talent, and then like I walk out of the room and Haley does all the
like mic drop.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Haley does all the actual work. I just kind of get to
Exactly.
hang out and talk.
I most definitely will add all of your links in the show notes below
you.
so people can just click and go follow you. And I just love all of your reels with your space buttons. You're very spunky. And people think
Thank
moms are boring.
you.
And then there's people like you who prove that moms are not boring.
No, definitely not boring.
That's awesome. Well, Sammy, thank you so much for taking some time today to chat with us. It was awesome meeting you again. We had nothing but good things to share, and after chatting with you for close to an hour, it's obviously clear why. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks for listening to The Price of Avocado Toast. If you vibed with this episode, share it with a friend that you're comfortable having money talks with. And if you don't mind, we'd love if you could rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you're in need of my support as a financial coach, message me on Instagram. I'd love to help in any way that I can. Until next time.